Classifications are exclusively a name coding system. There are many ways to code your name records. You can use jurisdiction, name type, and caseworker, for example, but classifications offer a wider variety of options when it comes to reporting. If you want a way to track sets of name records, your first thought should be classifications and use the other options for special and specific reasons. You can create as many classifications as you need and assign as many as you want to any donor name record. Let's walk through an example. Let's say that you want to know who your major donors are, to send them maybe special mailings, exempt them from some mailings, and some person in your organization may want from time to time to take a look at just their donations. Of course, you first have to define what a major donor is for your organization, but for now, let's say we just know who they are. The first step is to create the classification record. For that, we click the plus sign and then classifications. Here we see a list of classifications that someone has already created. We'll click Add New to create a new one. First, we need to enter a description, and I'll just put major donor there. Then we need to give it a code, and like all codes in Denari, it must be unique, but you can keep it simple. We could use MD, for example, and I'll just put some initials behind it. Now we need to put this into a category. Categories are just groups of classifications that make them easier to find and use. There are 5 categories available to you. You can't add categories or take them away, but you can rename them, and we'll look at how you do that in a few minutes. For now, we'll skip the export name field at the bottom. Now we can apply the classification to a name record. We'll click the Names link on the left and then Name List Management. And finally, I'll just select a name record. From inside the name record, we can click on the Classifications link in the right sidebar. Notice the 5 categories and the names next to each one. We'll find our classification, select it, and click the arrow to move it to the right. This name record is now classified, and the page is saved just when you make the selection. To change the category names, you can go to the plus sign and then Class Categories. Select the one you want to change the description here, and click Save. It will now show that way back on that classification page and in other areas of Denari. You will almost always use classifications in Name Segmenter. So let's say we want to do a mailing to just the major donors. We can go to the Reports link on the left, select Query Tools, and then Name Segmenter. Here we see a list of segments that have already been created by someone else. We'll click Add New to create a new one. And just like everything else in Denari, we need to give it a description and a unique code. And I'm going to change this just a little bit. Now we can use our classifications. To include a classification, I'm going to click on Classes In. Notice that this page looks very similar to the page we just saw in the name record with the 5 categories and groups of classifications. To use our classification, we simply find our category, move to our classification, select it, and move it to the right again. Now when we run this segment Denari is going to find all the name records with that classification and include them in the output. Now let's take a look at the real advantages of classifications. I can select more than one here. If I select two or more in the same category, they have an OR operator between them. For example, if I selected Major Donor and Boys Club, I will get all the names that have Major Donor or Boys Club. In other words, either one. And I can select as many as I want here. If I select classifications in any other category, I have an AND operator between them. And so in this case, I will get anyone who has a classification of Major Donor and NRM Banquet. In other words, both classifications must be true, or the donor must have both classifications in order to show in the output. And again, I can select multiple classifications with the same and or rules. Now, let me slide this out to the side a little, and we see back in the name segmenter screen, we have an assume or checkbox. When that is checked, the AND operator between the boxes becomes an OR. So if a donor has any classification selected in any category, they will be included in the output. Again, there is a separate video on name segmenter that will explain this in more detail, but we wanted to give you an idea of how you might use classifications here. I also have a Classes Out button. This page looks exactly the same. However, anything I select here will be removed from the output. And so if I want to exclude my major donors from a mailing, I can select them here. Other popular classifications that are used, especially in Classes Out, are for deceased records or people who have indicated that they want to be excluded from mailings. This completes this video on classifications. If you have any questions, please contact tech support by clicking the Help button in the upper right corner of the Denari page.